The Out of the Norm show is made possible through the generosity of our partners in progress. College at the Crossing in Bella Vista. A.G. Russell Knives in Rogers. The Arkansas and Missouri Railroad in Springdale. The Bank of Gravette, caretakers of the Arkansas Spirit. Discount Smokes and Liquor in Jane, Missouri. Smith Family Chiropractic Clinic in Bentonville. B. LaRue Gifts at Village on the Creeks in Rogers and downtown Bentonville. Simmons Suites in Bentonville. Kaufman Realty in Bella Vista.
This is Petra from Boca Raton, Florida, and this is the Out of the Norm show, where the stories are all about you.
Making a left-hand turn in Washburn, Missouri. Never been there, didn't even know where I was when I got here, but I'm sure glad I did because we've met some new friends here. Hi, this is Norm Allen with you on another version of the Out of the Norm show where the stories are all about you. Today we're going to be looking at strings, 6 strings and single string with a young man named Jake Stogdell, and this guy is a very talented guy, and if you don't watch this show, you're going to miss something really good. So please don't go away. Stay right there. We'll be right back after a short break on the Out of the Norm show where the stories are all about you. Hi, welcome back to the Out of the Norm show. We hope that you're going to enjoy today's show. I'm with a new friend. His name is Jake Stogdell, and he's from a little town called Washburn, Missouri.
Washburn.
Named after the guitars, right?
Some have said that, yes.
Well, it may as well be because we're in a music store. It's called Crazy Mule Music. This is so interesting to me. I just happened to be coming down the road the other day and was on my way to somewhere else and saw your sign out front and came in and visited with your mom, and before long we got to be friends and visited with your dad, and they were telling me all about you. You've got quite an array of abilities, don't you?
Well, I have many interests, yes. I have, there are many things that catch my attention and I try to pursue. So.
But you've been playing music for quite a while, haven't you?
About 10 years, yeah.
Really? Only 10 years?
Yeah, roughly. I started I was about 15 years old.
What brought you into it? What made you decide you wanted to do that?
Honestly, I didn't really have any motivation as far as learning to play. My dad had always played. He always played banjo, and they played in a band and they played here and there.
Right.
And so I had somewhat of a background, but it really didn't interest me. I wouldn't even, when I was driving in my truck or riding in a car with someone, I hated to have the music, like the radio, on. I just
really?
I wasn't that interested in it.
Huh.
And it was kind of on a bribe that I got to play in. Dad said that at the time I was into riding four-wheelers and stuff, and he said that if I learned to second him or play chords behind every song that he could play on the banjo,
right,
that he would help make my new dream quad a reality, if you will. So by the time I was a few weeks into it, I didn't even want it anymore. I wanted a new Martin guitar, so that was my new goal. And shortly thereafter, I learned all the songs that he had required that I learn, and he bought me my new Martin guitar. Still have that guitar today.
You still play it today?
Still play it today.
What kind of music did you listen to, though, once you kind of got the bug to play? What kind of stuff influenced you the most?
Being a kid in high school, to begin with, I had a Stratocaster, and I learned what was popular at the time, but only because it was popular, I think. It didn't really catch me that much. I was always around the bluegrass. So the bluegrass and the Irish Celtic sounds and stuff, that's what really caught me. And one of the few songs I would go around humming all the time when I was a kid was Greensleeves. I just love that real rootsy, Irish
pretty melody,
music.
right?
Yeah, right.
But so rock and roll really wasn't a part of your life then?
It really wasn't in any way, shape, or form. I mean, in the years that followed after I began learning and playing and teaching, it became more so a part because I had to learn the stuff to teach it.
Does it interest you now?
I'm to the point now where good music is good music. I don't really, I don't really put down borders with different genres. I don't have like certain genres that I just don't listen to. I'll listen to anything as long as it's good.
There you go.
But at the same token, I don't find a lot of inspiration from modern day hip hop or anything like that.
Sure. What inspires you? What really brings it out in you?
I don't know. It's just, I think a lot of it is just being in, a small community like this. One thing that always inspired me was musicians who seemed to take and have so much feeling in their playing. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily even technically the greatest players, but just people who could play and you could feel it from the heart every time you listen to it and things like that. And that was always, due to the roots, the person that they were. A lot of times they say the music's up here and the instrument's just a conduit. It just travels through the music. And it's like anything else. It's like acting. If you're an actor, you've got to take whatever character you're playing and relate to your own life experiences to be able to make that character realistic. And it's the same way with music. You gotta draw from what you feel. You can't necessarily. So I guess inspiration comes from within as far as that goes. Now I have hordes of musical influences as far as people I like to listen to, but it comes right down to it, making and playing with feeling. That I guess you've just got to learn to channel that for yourself.
What was the first time you sat in front of an audience? How was that experience? The first time you played for someone or for a group of people?
I really don't even remember the first time. We've been doing it for so long now. I never was nervous as far as playing the guitar. Now, singing and stuff like that was a little bit of a fight because singing didn't come natural for me. I've had to work at that. Mm-hmm. So whenever I was playing, an instrument, I was always fairly comfortable by the time I got to the point where I was playing shows and stuff. And I had a lot of, when I was in high school, I had a lot of theater background and stuff like this. Actually, here in Washburn, they've got one of the best theater departments in the state as far as that goes. And so I was always comfortable in front of an audience. So the nerves didn't really play a huge factor. And I guess to answer your question, I don't even really distinctively remember a first time of playing in front of an audience.
How do you think is the best way for a young person who's starting out and they're excited about it and they're learning some things and they feel fairly confident in doing? How do you deal with compliments? When people come up to you and go, "Wow, you're the best I've ever heard, and you should be in Nashville." You've heard it a million times, I'm sure. But I mean, how did you get used to that kind of response from an audience?
Anyone who knows me will tell you I am the worst compliment taker. So that's a horrible question for me to answer. That's part I never really did get used to. You always just try to be humble, and appreciative that people like what you do. But as far as like a generic bag of responses to compliments, I never really had any.
So you really didn't work for a compliment, you worked because of the music.
Yeah, and you want people to enjoy what you're doing, but ultimately if you don't enjoy what you're doing, they're not going to. So the first goal is always enjoy what you're doing first, and then the rest will, the audience will fall into that.
Well, I mentioned influences, and of course in bluegrass it's so common for you guys to learn traditional songs, some that have been played for 100 years, and you try to put your own spin on it. Do you ever get in a mode where you've created your own stuff that's maybe a little bit out of the box?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean that's really that's one of your aims as a musician once you get beyond the tradition of it. And the tradition's a good point. Bluegrass especially is a very kind of an oral tradition in a sense.
Right.
You know how it's like storytelling in a sense. Classical music, you can get a sheet of music and you know how to play the piano and you play it. But bluegrass is transferred by just getting in jam sessions with people and learning firsthand. Just sitting there around the jam session, campfires, and things like that, it's more like a storytelling session, and you just learn the songs from each other rather than from like a source like a book or something like that.
But the tradition still has to be tradition where those songs are memorable and carried on generation to generation.
Yeah, right. So if you're trying to stay within a bluegrass context, if you were writing a new song, the goal is to write something that no one's ever heard before, but make it sound like 100 years old and like they've heard it 1,000 times.
And then when you sit around the campfire, everybody plays your song.
Right, yeah.
And it begins the same tradition and falls into the same thing.
Right.
What part of gospel music has been an influence for you? Or is it an influence?
Oh, sure.
Is it an important part of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually, for a long time, was a song leader. Well, I say a long time, for several years, down at our little church just not far up the road here, and learning all the hymns and playing those regularly. And just on bluegrass in general, gospel is one of the three main influences. There's really only three. There was gospel, church music,
right,
and then the Irish fiddle music, like that was still around in the Appalachian Mountains and the Ozarks back in the 30s and 40s especially, and then blues music from the Mississippi area.
Oh.
And so those are the three influences. When the father of bluegrass, Bill Monroe, started, those are the three influences that he drew from for his music. Because you have the bluesy influence that adds a certain element, and then of course you can hear the Irish. We talked about that just a minute ago.
Sure.
The Irish influence, and as far as the vocals are concerned, and a lot of the songs that are played just come straight out of hymnals.
Sure. And the vocal style, it's not country music, is it?
Mm-mm.
There's a whole lot of difference, isn't there?
Yeah. Basically, like I said, it's like church music. They'd be singing 2 or 3 part harmonies most of the time, and it's just a real plain harmony. You have your melody line, and then anyone out there who understands music, you'd have your fifth or your third above that and the fifth below it, in your harmony, your triad harmony.
And the piece you're going to play for us today, what is it called?
That would be Cherokee Shuffle, and it's an old fiddle tune from. It's just one of those. It's just labeled traditional because it's so old, no one knows how old it is.
But it's an old fiddle tune, and you adapted it to guitar.
Yeah, right. Well, originally in bluegrass there was no guitar players. It was mandolin, fiddle, and banjo, and it actually wasn't until probably the 60s that really become a dominating style for guitar in bluegrass as a lead instrument. It really wasn't done before. So, as far as that goes, you're still kind of on the cutting edge of bluegrass guitar, because for something, and it's interesting, for something that sounds so old, bluegrass guitar is only maybe 50, 60 years old compared to, other music styles that are ancient.
But going back to the Maybelle Carter and those back in the 20s, though, they were playing guitars, but it was a different style of music, wasn't it?
Yeah, right. That was before. Bluegrass didn't officially have its stamp until the 40s. And there was some country and folk styles that came before that, and the Kingston Trio and the Carter family and that you mentioned, and so there was definitely influence there. But as far as and that's what the early lead bluegrass guitar players drew influence from, was people like Mother Maybelle and so on.
And of course, that old mountain gospel music too. That's where they came from.
Yeah.
Well, that's really neat. Cherokee Shuffle.
Cherokee Shuffle.
Where did it come from? Do you know?
Like I said, it's just been around so long. Yep, it's one of those things that, like any oral tradition, you can remember a lot of stories. You don't necessarily know their origin, though. Right. I'm sure that one's popular enough. It has a story to it if one were to research it and look it up. But it's just an old fiddle tune that's been around forever. It might even, if I'm not mistaken, it might even predate the official bluegrass era when that come into play. It was just a fiddle tune from way back when.
Well, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to listen to Jake play. I think you're going to really enjoy this. So let's do Cherokee Shuffle.
We'll try.
going to put my guitar back in the case now until I can learn how to really play it, even though I've got about 35 years of playing. I can't do what you do. And I really appreciate that. I could see the passion in your eyes about that. You probably played that piece 1,000 times, but you still enjoy it, and I can tell you it comes from your heart as well.
Yeah, that's the key to making music come across and letting other people enjoy it is first and foremost enjoying it yourself.
Now you do something else that, again, it's something I never thought of. Yo-yos.
Yeah.
Of all things, yo-yo. You guys know what yo-yos are. You've $1.50 yo-yo, Duncan yo-yos, or we got them in our stocking at Christmas when we were little kids. Mm-hmm. But you've come along, you took a different route with that, didn't you?
Some have said that, yes, and that all come about. The guitar music has actually replaced my passion for yo-yos, and I still do them from time to time. But yeah, the yo-yos. I remember going on a school trip to the George Washington Carver National Monument Park up not far from here, actually. And there was, in the gift shop, all the kids got these wooden yo-yos in the gift shop. And there were some of the kids that were really good. And I don't remember how old I was, maybe 9, 10 years old. And so I thought I was going to buy me one. And they made it just look so easy that I figured I could just, within a few minutes, be doing the same stuff and having all the fun they were. And it didn't come easy for me at all, honestly. I couldn't even do the basic gravity pull. I couldn't make it come back to my hand. And I tried for hours. Eventually just threw it in a box. Yeah. And would run across it every once in a while when I was digging through my stuff. And I had a friend of mine that I went to school with actually got into it pretty hardcore. And his mother worked at Walmart, and they had a team of experts come in doing yo-yo demonstrations. And he had showed me a few things. And so at that point, I was interested enough to want to try again. I was about 12 years old, maybe 12 or 13, somewhere in there. And so at that point, I went to my mom and said, "Hey, I need one of these $50 yo-yos, because that's how much they cost if you want a good one. Because I can't do the things these guys are doing with this fixed axle wooden yo-yo. I got to have a good one." And she said, "Well, that's just too much money for a yo-yo. You learn to get good at it first, then we'll talk, So she bought me a $20 one, and within 3-4 weeks or so, I convinced her I was good enough to go ahead and get the $50 one. And then it just kind of blossomed from there, just making up tricks. And
was there instruction books or videos or something like that to learn this stuff from, or did you just kind of make things up as you went?
There was. At the time that I started yo-yoing, the tricks, as far as the number of tricks versus the number of tricks there are today, it was maybe in all seriousness, there might be 5% of the tricks that I'd learned back then are actually, in comparison. That was all the tricks. What I'm trying to say is that was all the tricks at the time, and today it makes up maybe 5% of how many tricks exist. So at the time I started, the hardest one was called Split the Atom. And my friend who worked at Walmart, his mom worked at Walmart, he had a video that we watched for days trying to learn these tricks. It wasn't really an instructional video, it was just, someone doing the tricks, yeah. And we put it in slow motion, and we would take turns, we weren't coordinated enough to do it while the yo-yo was still spinning. So what we did was, he would hold the yo-yo dead so it wouldn't flop over. And then we would mimic the string transitions and stuff like that, and that's how we learned at the time.
Well, let's see some of those tricks.
Okay, we can give it a shot.
The only yo-yo I knew was a thing you used to cut grass with. Can you do it sitting down, or do we need to back up?
I can probably do some sitting down here. All right. Like I said, at the time I learned, this was the hardest trick in existence. It's called splitting the atom. Which looks pretty difficult. Began inventing our own off of variations. So you would have, whereas this is splitting the atom, which I just did, you would have variations of that trick, in the same mount and finger styles and stuff like that. So you just learn to keep going and going and going with it. Here's another one. This was called Boingy Boingy. That's a split the atom style trick. This is Poppin' Fresh. And then Mach 5. Here's a neat one that seems to defy gravity. I don't know if you can see that there. This one's called Wormhole.
Now, is the yo-yo still spinning while you're doing these?
Yeah.
Going through all that?
It's spinning the whole time. It's not your wooden yo-yo that your grandfather used to play with. It's they have special axles of these little high-speed precision roller bearings, and they have brake pad systems and all kinds of things. And they're actually, anymore, they're designed not to come back to your hand. See that? It will not return to your hand with a tug. You have to do what's called a bind return, which means you catch it on the string and you wad enough string up in there till it grips and comes back. And that's so you can do slack tricks. If I want to pop it up and whip it in the air like that, I can if I so desire. Here's another neat one. This one's called Gyroscopic Flop.
So you learned all these things with the same intensity that you play guitar with. You just have to do it the best, right?
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
But didn't you get into competition as well?
Yeah.
Tell me about that first competition you went to.
First competition I went to, I was so nervous that I couldn't hardly get my hands to work. And that was before I'd really got over the stage fright that we talked about in the music. So, yeah, I remember the first competition well. It was in Eureka Springs. And I ended up winning it, and it just by barely though that first year. And then from there, as my confidence grew and everything, I got to where I could be pretty cool-headed at most competitions. I won Arkansas State a couple times, and I won a big Midwest regional over in St. Louis. And yeah, it was one of those things that it's just like music, and yet to the untrained eye, it may be hard to see things that are unique, but every yo-yo out there had his own style, and they made up their own tricks and stuff like that. My specialty at the time, what I was on the cutting edge of and making up, were like what I call knot tricks, or making it look like you just made one big mistake, and then at the last minute somehow the knot's gone and you're back to being the golden boy. I'll show you one of those. See, this would be an example of a knot trick. And then everything's good from there, and you can throw it back on the string and flip it around and do whatever you want to do. Here's another one I made up. This one's called, I don't know how well I can do it sitting down here, but I'll try. This one's called Crystal Clear. But at the time I made that one up, I think it officially took command as the hardest trick in the world at the time. So, but like I said, this passion's kind of give way to many others, and music being one of those. I still throw it around from time to time, but I'm not on the cutting edge like the. They've just continued to get better and better from the time I stopped till now. And there's people doing things with yo-yos now you couldn't even believe. I can't even believe with what I'm doing here. It's just like anything else.
Well, you seem to do everything with an intensity that, whether it's playing music or that. What are some of the other passions?
I really like, I don't know, I like guns. I'm a gun enthusiast. I like shooting and collecting and all that. Another thing I spend a lot of my time doing is just studying. College hasn't really been a logical option for me with being married and having 2 kids, but I try to give myself a college education basically without the diploma. And so a lot of the areas I like to study are theology, scripture, and stuff like that.
Well, I think we ought to hear another song.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's go to it. I'll let you just take it over. Enjoyed all of that. I really did. Your music is wonderful, and the tricks on the yo-yo. It's nice to still have a little kid in us, isn't it?
Oh yeah. That's one of my goals also. With so many hobbies, it's easy to escape the very stressful circumstances of life. And there's a lot of truth in that. If you can just do something for a few minutes and escape, and just forget everything that's bothering you, you can just be a lot more balanced person, I think.
And it doesn't take artificial stimulation to do that either, does it?
No. That's drugs, alcohol, stuff like that. That was never an option for me. I was just rise above that and apply yourself. And you can, really, I don't consider myself to be any better naturally at anything than anyone else. But everything I've done with 110%. And you just work hard and it'll pay off, and have fun. That's the biggest thing. If you're not enjoying something you're doing, there's no point in doing it in the first place.
If you can't get into it, get out of it.
Yep, that's good. I like that.
Well, I thank you so much for being on the show today and sharing this. And we're talking to a lot of young people and folks from all around the country. One of the things that I would want to leave you with is that whatever that passion is in your life, whether it's sewing, playing the guitar, playing the yo-yo, or doing something that just brings that little moment of peace in your life, reach out and find it. If you haven't found it yet, it's there for you, because God put a real creative spirit in every single one of us. And I hope that you will find your gift today, and that you'll express it in a way that will bring joy not only to you, but joy to the people around you. Thanks again for being a part of the Out of the Norm show. And who knows, if you look out your window one day, you might find us coming through your neighborhood, because as always, the Out of the Norm show, where the stories are all about you. We'll see you again very soon. God bless you.
Like loving the South and me, just loving you.